today, coming from our Torah portion in Numbers chapter 5. We're going to be looking at this section as it deals with the husband who suspects his wife of adultery. And as you can see in the prophetic sections, that adultery and idolatry are two sides of the same coin. That spiritual adultery is where one enters into idolatry. And you go, to put it in the words of the prophets, a whoring after other gods. So that prostitution is a metaphor for those who would go into idolatry. Now, let's be honest that this particular text in Numbers chapter 5 is one of the craziest and most bizarre texts you have in all the Torah. It's really bizarre. This trial by water. So we're going to go through and pick this apart a little bit because it's definitely an odd text. And as the Hebrew scriptures go, it's one of the oddest. And it's one of those texts that when people come to it who don't have any background in the Hebrew scripture, they say, wow, this is just a crazy, crazy text. Whatever is going on here is nutso. So it's a very, very bizarre ordeal, and so we want to walk our way through it because admittedly it's got some parts to it that are, if you look at it, you just kind of go, okay, wow, what's going on here? Okay? All right, so take your text. Go to Numbers chapter 5 and verse 11. Numbers chapter 5 and verse 11. It says, speak to the children of Israel, say to them, if any man's wife goes astray and behaves unfaithfully towards him, if a man lies with her carnally, and it is hidden from the eyes of her husband, and it is concealed that she has defiled herself, and there is no witness against her, nor was she caught. So no witnesses, and she's not caught. It's simply suspicion. If the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, who has defiled her, or if the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, although she has not defiled herself, then the man shall bring his wife to the priest. He shall bring the offering required for her, 1/10 of an ephah of barley meal. He shall pour no oil on it and put no frankincense on it, because it is a grain offering of jealousy, an offering for remembering, for bringing iniquity to remembrance. Okay, now, when we read through this text, what would give a man reason to suspicion his wife of adultery? Or, for that matter, a wife of her husband? What kind of things would give one cause to think that the other party was not faithful? Yes? Yeah.
Is the party suspicious? What are they doing?
Let's say that again?
The party is suspicious. What are they doing in their own life?
Okay. One way of thinking about it. Yeah. Okay. Good point. Yes.
Gets pregnant by another guy.
That's a clue.
That's a big clue. Yes. That's always a big clue. However, how do you know
if you haven't had the relationship?
if you haven't, like if you've been off to war? Okay, you've been gone for a long time. Let's say you go off to war.
There's the child there where you've been.
And you come back and your wife's pregnant. You go, And that's one of those things that makes you go, Yeah, that would be one. So, but that one's kind of obvious. Thinking a little more subtle. Yeah.
Acting out of character.
Acting out of character.
Not being someplace that she said she was supposed to be.
Not being someplace she said she was supposed to be. How about long gaps of time for which there's no reckoning? You say, well, where were you? It's like, well, there's long gaps of time for which you can't account. That'd be one. Okay, anybody else?
sneaking out the window, taking the screen off the window and sneaking out at 3 in the morning?
Yeah, that would be, okay. Yes, that would be a way. I like the more obvious ones, yes.
This is less obvious. This one is what if she maybe just doesn't act interested in her husband anymore.
Ah, yes. Lack of interest, where you just say, you know what? Like, not really into you anymore. Yeah, it's okay. But not wanting to be around the person.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't care to be around you. I don't care whether you come or go. Yeah, those are a little more subtle. But they start to make the husband go, or wife, go, okay, yeah.
Why isn't the wife mentioned in this passage?
Okay. I knew there'd be one like that. There's always one person. Here's the reason why. Obviously, we have a patriarchal society where the land and thus the money and everything that goes with that land, the cattle, everything is controlled by the guys. Okay, so usually an inheritance goes by the next in line genetically. Okay, so they're more concerned with inheritance rights, and women, although we're going to find later on, initially in the Torah, women did not get the inheritance. Okay? They didn't get the land inheritance. Although, we're going to find a little bit later on in the book of Numbers that there's a man by the name of Zelophehad. That's a lovely name. He has 5 daughters. They come to Moses and say, our father died, but he didn't die in the rebellion. And we have no husbands and no brothers. So does our father's land just go to somebody else, to an uncle, another man in the line? And Moses says, I don't know what to do with this. Okay? So he goes to God, and he goes to the tent of meeting, and he says, okay, God, the girls have come to me and said that they have no land, their fathers died, but didn't die in the rebellion, they have no husbands. And God says, give the girls the land. Okay? Which is interesting because there's a lot of people who think, as you read through these text questions like this, that say, that's a great question. God doesn't like women. Okay? He's kind of anti-female in the Bible. Well, here's an example of where God says, no, give the land to the girls. They get the land.
The rebellion, you're talking about Korah?
Yes, the rebellion of Korah. They said, the girls say, he didn't die in the rebellion of Korah. Now, here's what's interesting, though.
Brent?
Hold on one second. Let me finish this up. Go ahead. Yeah.
But there was a stipulation with
I'm
God's
getting to that,
statute.
yes.
They had to marry within the tribe, so
That's
the
what I was
land
getting
would
to.
stay
Yes.
in the tribe.
I'm coming to that. Yeah, at the very end of the book of Numbers, it says they have to marry in their tribe, because the tribes would come and say, if these girls marry outside the land, then the land will revert to the tribe that they married into. So he comes back and he says, okay, girls, you have to marry within the tribe, which they do. Later on, we find all 5 of them marry within the tribe, so the land stays tribal. Okay. So that was another issue, was land division, inheritance rights. Okay. So that's why paternity is a big issue with regards to everyone. Okay, within the land. So here's what happens. We find out later on in the rabbinic literature, they say that actually the wife could initiate this process as well towards her husband. That this was not just something that the guy could initiate, but if she suspected that there was some kind of unfaithfulness, she could also go to the priest and say, I want the same thing done for my husband. I wonder about him as well. So it wasn't just, from what we understand, it wasn't just one-sided. That in pragmatics, it may have been both and, not just either or. Yeah.
I get the whole swelling of the belly, wasting away the thigh. But why bring an offering?
That's a good question as well.
Stop that, Marcus.
Huh?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's a great question. The reason why you bring an offering is because all of this is going to go before God. And so everything is being done in an atmosphere of bringing this before the Lord, and an offering is appropriate for coming before the Lord. Anytime you come before the Lord, you would bring an offering.
Yes.
Okay? So it was just understood that if you're going to come before the Lord to find out the decision, and by the way, that's a great point, is that this decision is going to be decided by God. We're going to take this out of the hands of men, and we're going to put this into the hands of God to decide, is she guilty or is she innocent? Okay? So that's the background to this. Tell you a true story. None of you will know the individual that I'm talking about. I don't think. There will be a few of you who might. One of the bummer things about being a pastor, well, there's a number of things, but that's one of the downsides is watching at times marriages disintegrate, because you see people get married. Over time, you see sometimes people grow together, and sometimes they grow apart. And then, as they grow apart, then they eventually go to other partners, and it gets messy, extremely messy. I was heading down to Portland, and my wife wakes me up at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and she says to me, "You need to go find so-and-so," because we was her and Danielle. Now here's how Danielle described this relationship of this woman who was married with a guy who wasn't married. She says, they look at each other like they're married. What does that mean?
At the time, she was like 6.
Yeah, she's about 6 years old at the time. Married people have a way of looking at each other that lets other people know that they're married. Okay? Kids figure this out.
You mean the evil eye?
The evil eye. Yeah, usually with me, it's the raised eyebrow. So, the bird. Yeah. We'll need some levity throughout this, so throw those in. So, at 1 o'clock in the morning, she says, "You need to go find this individual." So I drive down to where this individual lives, and I don't see her car, so I pull away. Remember, this is now we're about 1:30 in the morning. So I get a phone call from this individual's husband, who says to me, "Are you just in my driveway?" Uh-oh. I went, "I'm answering the phone at 1:30 in the morning." And he says, I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Why?" I said, "I got a question. Do you know where your wife is?" He says, "Well, she's not here." I said, "Okay, I'll be back." So I go back to the house. Now remember, now we're about 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting in his house at 2 a.m. in the morning, 3 o'clock, 3:30. All of a sudden, about 3:30, 3:45, the door starts to open just slightly, real quiet. And his wife walks in. Now I'm sitting there, if I'm in your living room at 3 a.m. in the morning, it's probably not a good thing. Okay, I'm just going to say that right now. If I'm sitting in your living room at 3 a.m. in the morning, know that it's probably not a good thing. And so, the first thing I said was, "Where you been?" She says, "Out and about." Okay. I said, "Who are you with?" And she just kind of went, "Oh." Right? So, long story short, it was a long, long, long road. A long, long road to restoration in that marriage. Because once you violate trust, and all relationships are based on trust. Every relationship is based on some level of trust, and especially marriage. If you violate trust, you destroy things. Trust takes years and years to build. It can be destroyed in a second. And it took years and years to try to rebuild this marriage. It can be done, but it takes a lot of work. And everybody committing themselves on both sides of this to say, "You know what, no, we will remain faithful." This is why marriage is a metaphor for God's relationship with his people. Because in the marriage relationship, there is supposed to be devotion and passion for each other. Where you want to spend time with the other person, you want to be around the other person. So this becomes the metaphor for God's relationship with his people. That we are in a marriage. And the way we know this is because if we go back to Exodus chapter 32 with the golden calf, when Israel enters into idolatry at the golden calf, God makes them drink bitter water as well. You'll remember Moses grinds up the golden calf into powder, puts it into the water and says, you guys drink that. Same type of situation we have going on here. Now look at what happens. For those of you that have your notes, let me go through this really quick. On page 3, because this was a lengthy section, the first step in the process is for the husband to bring his wife to the priest, presumably telling him that he wants his wife to drink the waters of bitterness. Beside page 3, third paragraph. Beside bringing his wife, the husband must provide her with an offering referred to simply here as korban. The offering consists of 1/10 an ephah, about 2 quarts of coarse barley, meal, or flour. While most other meal offerings were made of fine flour, this offering is made from the less expensive barley flour. Barley is generally cheaper than wheat and was often associated with the poor, i.e. Luke 2:17, as well as being the food of animals. Ramban Gamliel said of this offering, because her act was the act of a beast, so her offering is the food of a beast. Ooh. In this ritual, there is no oil or frankincense added, probably because they were associated with joy. Jacob Milgrom suggests that the purpose of the offering is to purify the sanctuary in case the woman is found guilty. In the second step of the ritual, the scene now shifts to the work of the priest. Having been handed over to the priest now positions the woman by bringing her near and presents her before Yodhe-Vape. As the priest positions the woman, he unbinds the woman's hair, which presupposes that it was placed up prior to this event. The actual idiom here is unbind the head, and you can't unbind the head. So we're assuming it's unbind the hair, which makes use of the literary feature known as ellipsis. An ellipsis is where certain words are left out and must be supplied, thus the word hair, while not in the text, must be supplied to make sense of what is happening. The text just says unbind her head. So, many ideas have been put forth to explain the significance of this act, to include an act of mourning, to indicate uncleanness, or as an act of shaming. Drawing definitive conclusions on the meaning of the fallen or exposed hair would be speculative at best. The third step is for the priest to collect some water, which the woman will be required to drink. The text does not tell us the source of the water, but Tractate Sotah reveals the laver as the source. Right when you come in to the temple tabernacle area, you have a laver with water in it, where the priest would wash their hands and their feet. But we're not told where the water comes from. It's assumed, according to the Tractate, that this is where the water comes from. After taking the water, the priest mixes it with dust taken from the tabernacle precincts. No ratios of water to dust are given in the text, and no place is specified for the source of the dust. The text calls this mixture of water and dust the waters which bring or cause bitterness. The Septuagint renders the Hebrew phrase as waters of testing. In recent years, there have been various attempts at retranslating the word for bitter, but none have received a consensus or widespread acceptance. The next activity of the priest is to write down a curse upon a scroll, and then place water upon the scroll so that the ink would run. The words of the scroll, which have now become a mixture of water and ink, are added to the previous vessel containing the water and dust, so that we now have a mixture of water, dust, and ink. The drinking of the ink from the scroll is a powerful symbol that the very words of the curse itself will penetrate the innermost parts of the woman, along with the waters. After the priest mixes the water, dust, and ink, the woman is made to verify that she has understood the curse being placed upon her, provided she is guilty, by repeating the word Amen. The word Amen is not uncommon as a response to curses, as we see in Deuteronomy 27 and Nehemiah 5. So you say Amen, Amen, to show that you understand. As the curse is examined, 2 punishments are described should the woman be guilty of adultery. First, we are told that her thigh will fall, and secondly, that her belly will swell. In the first phrase, the word for thigh is the Hebrew word yarek, which many see as a euphemism for the procreating organs, due to its proximity to the thigh. Support for this idea is found in Genesis 46:26, where the offspring are described as, quote, those who go out from his thigh. In the second phrase, the Hebrew word for it used is generic enough to include not only the belly, but internal organs as well. While speculation is not lacking, the truth is that we really don't know what physiological maladies the text is describing. Suffice to say that whatever does happen to the woman is not a good thing. One last thought on the punishment phase should be added. We are told that ultimately the woman will bear her punishment. This phrase, when used elsewhere in the Hebrew Scripture, means the punishment is left to God. In the final analysis, only God knows whether the woman is guilty or innocent, and thus only God can mete out her punishment or exonerate her. So, all right, you with me on this? Following along? Glazed over? Yes.
This is what Joseph would have had to do to Mary
Yes.
if he really wanted to lawyer up, so to speak.
Yes. If Joseph had decided to lawyer up, he could have done this to Mary.
Great.
Yes.
They weren't married yet.
They were
They're betrothed, which is close enough.
Yeah.
It means you're intended.
Betrothed
In
is
their way of thinking, marriage was in a stage, betrothal and then consummation. So in a sense, they've already made the commitment verbally.
Would you really have to do that if she's pregnant?
Yeah, if she's pregnant, it's kind of obvious.
Kind of a waste of a test.
It's kind of a waste of a test if she's pregnant.
The
Yes.
betrothal is the marriage.
Yes.
They wait a year
Right.
so they can prove that she's never been with another man.
That's one of the reasons why you wait. Yes. Yeah. Larry, sorry, go ahead.
So once, if she was guilty and this happened, was there anything else that was done, or did it just drop?
There's the belief that if the thigh extending and the belly swelling, that some believe that there's that if she is pregnant by another man's with another man's child, that this child would be aborted. That's how some view this.
I know some other, places talks about, if she's caught, she and the man are both put to death. If they're caught in the act.
If they're caught in the act, and this is a situation though where you don't have any proof, you don't have any witnesses, and there's no admission. See, if the person denies it, then you're left with no proof. And if there's no witnesses, and often these kinds of things don't have witnesses. Usually people sneak away in private to do this kind of stuff. So it's not like there's a bunch of people around. Huh? And you need 2 witnesses for a capital case. And you're not required, you don't have to incriminate yourself in a capital case. Now here's what's interesting about this one though, it's brought to the priest. It's brought before the priest to take it out of the hands of the husband. He's angry, he's suspicious, and maybe he has a lot of reasons to be suspicious. But he can't prove it. Right, if the symptoms do not happen to her, if the physiological symptoms do not happen to her, then she's exonerated. Although you have to wonder, would she want to stay with this guy if he suspicions her? That's another whole story. Yes.
I'm reminded of that verse that says, don't fear the one that can destroy the body, but the one that can destroy the soul.
Yes.
Literally in this sense, you are basically, let's just say that she was guilty. She would literally have to face the one and try to, basically try to convince somebody that no is absolutely better, the one that can destroy the soul. And in trying to fool the one that could only destroy the flesh.
Well, you're absolutely right. Here's another thing to think about in the same idea. And this is why people think this. I know I want to be careful how I go about this, but here's one of those cases where you truly do have physiological problems brought on by God because of sin. Now, I'm caveating by saying not every physical problem that a person has is because of sin. Clearly. But here's a case where a person has physiological problems brought on by God because of something that they did. We can't extrapolate that to say, well, then every person who has some kind of problem is because of sin. No, that's not we don't go there. But in this instance, with this ordeal, the person that does have the illness, whoever it may be, it proves that they were guilty. God is basically testifying against them. And that's really what you're doing here, is you're letting God decide, is this a situation or not? You bring it to the priest puts the water and the dust together, he writes the curses down on a scroll, we pour water over that, we pour that into the mixture, then she drinks. And this allows for God to decide who is guilty and who isn't. It takes it out of the hands of man. Now we let God be the decider and the judge. Yes?
So in the event that, she's proven innocent, does this now fall into the category of false accusation, or is that something different?
No, because the husband doesn't testify.
Okay, all right.
In fact, this removes that from happening. He doesn't have to testify.
Oh, okay.
Good question. Yes?
I'm just wondering, in my mind's eye, how many false positives or false negatives ever occurred.
Text doesn't say. I will say this. I don't think God gives a false positive or a false negative. In other words, if you're guilty, what will happen will happen. If you're not guilty, you got to think though. You got to think about this. We were just talking about this regarding the juries. How many of you had jury duty? Raise your hand. All right. In a sense, you have to believe that if he's asked his wife if she's been faithful, and she says, yeah, okay,
Pretty much.
he can't prove it. He can't say she's wrong, he can't say she's right. He can neither affirm nor deny. I gotta believe that a woman who's now, he takes her to the priest, it's fine, we'll go to the priest. You gotta start to think that maybe, as she's entering into this process, she's thinking, wow, I better come clean. Maybe that'll force her hand. Because if you go through this process, God will make, and you're guilty, this will happen. God guarantees it. So now if you're, yes?
Wasn't the penalty for adultery stoning to death?
Yes.
So if she admits it, then she gets to be stoned to death?
Yes. But I mean, hey, she can, if she testifies against herself, that's enough.
Like if the husband,
She wasn't caught though, there weren't two witnesses.
You know, when you
But
say that,
admittance of guilt is the same.
when you say it that way, it's almost like the law was created to, when you look at really what's happening, it's exonerating the woman.
If
It's not
she's
about
innocent.
the husband, it's about the woman being set free from the accusation.
Exactly.
Because if she's guilty, she's already as good to die anyways. I see by
Right.
the other point of law.
Right. If she's guilty, she should die. Or he.
Right.
But if she's innocent, this is God testifying on her behalf to say she's innocent. And it's definitive.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's no case in history this ever transpired.
No, that's true. Right, that would be true. So we don't have anything recorded that this happened. But clearly it's here. It could have happened.